Hi everyone, my name's Tara from Findhorn Ecovillage, the north of Scotland. As Joanna mentioned, I'm speaking a little bit different today, more generally around ecological building used here in Findhorn. I hope it can still be interesting and of relevance to the discussions and conversation today. If you're not familiar, Findhorn Ecovillage community is based in the northeast of Scotland. It's evolved over the past 60 years as an experiment and demonstration centre for how we might live differently on the planet and with each other, looking at the social, ecological, economic aspects of sustainable design and living. So we're based on a sandy peninsula, and I have some before shots. So this was the early days, around 60 years ago. It was a caravan park and a caravan site, which the community slowly started to buy and acquire land in the area. Then to now, so well, actually, this is probably about 10 years old as well. I don't have a more up-to-date image, but the regeneration that's happened on the land over the past 50 or 60 years can be shown here. Yeah, we have some new housing developments up towards the west as well. So this is probably about half to 2/3 of the community as it is now, and yeah, quite a different comparison to the caravans of the early days. So not too many retrofitting examples here in the community. It moved more along the lines of thinking around building new sustainable and ecological buildings, and replacing the old caravans with eco-mobiles as well. And so yeah, in the early days, this is kind of what we were looking at, what we were working with, some of the early accommodation. A little bit further down the line, you can see it's the 3 bungalows still here on the right, and then a little bit further down the line still. So in 1993, the Findhorn Foundation published the UK's, I think, the first guide to ecological building techniques. And they started to ask, what is ecological in terms of building, and found that the answer really wasn't straightforward or simple. So they were looking at each aspect of a product's manufacture and use. So where it comes from and the impact of its production, its installation, use, and eventual disposal. And they found that each of these elements had far-reaching implications. So at the beginning, they started asking these guiding questions, which were, what are the energy and transport requirements of the product? What is the impact of the manufacturing process on the environment? How natural is the product? What is the stability over time? What is its impact on the residents living in the dwelling? And what are the alternative and relative costs of each? So another key factor of the early days was the building school. So people would come for a few weeks or a few months to live and work in the community. So one of the important aspects as well was in the early designs was to keep them simple, as the labour force consisted of mainly unskilled or semi-skilled volunteers. Yeah, a few more images of the building schools in the early days. And now we move on to some of the first houses that were built with these kind of principles in mind. This is kind of the first ecological housing development that happened there. In Bag End, and some of the features that they had and still have: passive solar through orientation and window layout, solar panels for domestic hot water, high levels of insulation made from recycled paper, triple glazing, non-toxic organic paints and wood preservatives, composite boarding manufactured without the use of toxic glues or resins, locally grown and harvested timber from managed forests, roofing with natural clay tiles, breathing wall construction, and some shared facilities as well. But yeah, the breathing wall was the preferred method in the early days, which is quite different to what is used now, and we'll see the contrast a little bit with some of the later developments as well. But it allowed for the controlled exchange of air and moisture, but it's not where the trend has gone these days, as far as my understanding goes. So these are some of the examples of the early designs. More examples of the innovative or interesting houses that were designed in the early days. These are whiskey barrels, recycled whiskey vats. Again, looking at what materials do we have locally available, and creative ideas around using them as housing. This one here on the bottom left is actually my dad's house, where I'm currently sitting right now. Straw bale was another example of a locally sourced sustainable material that was experimented with in the early days. Field of Dreams, I think because I think I will kind of skim past this. It was the next larger housing development where plots were sold individually, and people developed plots to their own standards or design. I mean, there were standards for the community, so they had to adhere to certain requirements, but it wasn't particularly formalized back then. So for example, height, this one here on the bottom right, that was supposed to be the height restriction for that whole housing development, but as you can see, the houses around it have didn't fully adhere to that. So yeah, these are more examples of the Field of Dreams houses, again skimming past. So this is more where we are now. The East Winds development that weren't really included in that photo of the community, which are our most up-to-date, technologically speaking, designs and houses that we have in the community, but no longer really built by the building school, predominantly by a design and build company called Greenleaf Design and Build, which started here in the community, I think in 2008. It was actually by one of the grandson of one of the founders started the company. And yeah, so some of the newer builds, so for some of the technology that is more up to date, I think in the early days, what Findhorn was doing was really innovative and pioneering, you know, in the 70s, 80s, 90s. But now society and technology has caught up, and so we are using alongside many of the features that were already mentioned in some of the other presentations, including heat pumps, solar, photovoltaic solar thermal, also for water heating, air tightness and passive house standards, triple glazed windows and doors. We're also looking more at district heating and microgrids as opposed to individual houses now. There's a move towards that approach. And also more attention given to affordable housing, as you could see in some of the houses in the Field of Dreams. This was something that we kind of didn't pay attention to for some years, and is now one of the issues in the community. So within these new developments, there has been a lot of attention given to affordable housing units as well. So yeah, I think just to put into contrast that, yeah, I think the Greenleaf Design and Build houses are all done to passive house standards with a controlled atmosphere and airtight outer shell, which was, yeah, quite different to the breathing wall technology of the past. And I think the point that I wanted to raise around here was to run them over time, they are more energy efficient and need the least outside input. However, some of these newer builds don't perhaps take into account the embodied carbon or embodied energy of all the building materials, as some of the older buildings maybe did so more. So yeah, the embodied carbon referring to the greenhouse gas emissions arising from the manufacturing, transport, installation, maintenance and disposal of building materials. Yeah, so I think some of the building materials used in these newer builds, perhaps they, for example, if they have to be deconstructed or demolished at some point, are all the materials recyclable? Probably not. And do some of them come from petrochemical backgrounds? Also possibly so. I'm also not an expert in this area. I'm kind of here to give a bit more of a general overview. And I hope to be able to link you guys to the relevant people if you have any more specific questions that I don't have the answers to myself. I've also linked down here at the bottom Greenleaf Design and Build, their website. They're doing some really interesting work, and they have contact information too. So if you want to get in touch with them, yeah, you can do so. And yeah, more specific questions, I can hopefully find the right person. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you.